Film and television are crucial to American culture. Motion pictures influence fashion, provide the lenses through which we see the world, and the movies and TV shows we consume shape the way we see ourselves and others. Whether we realize it or not, our stories are what make us uniquely human and connect us to the universal truths across society. It is imperative that these stories reflect the diversity of the society. A person should be able to find a story that reflects their own experiences, that they see themselves in. They should also have stories that allow them to peek into someone else's life, hence the window. Finally, people need access to stories that provide doors to allow them to step into an unfamiliar world. Unfortunately, it's common fact that Hollywood films often lack this kind of diversity. But today, I'm going to go full-on Ashton Applewhite on you and say that the portrayals of older adults in American cinema are stereotypical, ageist, and downright problematic. And I say it's about time we get informed and make some noise about it. To highlight this underrepresentation, a study published of the 100 top-grossing films from the 1940s to the 1980s discovered that only 2% of the characters in these films were over the age of 65, whereas the overall population of people over the age of 65 was 13%. This highlights the near total absence of older adults in Hollywood and reflects the ageism in Hollywood. Although times have changed slightly for the better, when older adults appear on film, they seem to be highly stereotyped, portraying flat characters rather than dynamic, or they're used as some sort of comedic relief. Unfortunately, women seem to take the brunt of these stereotypes. When it comes to women in the media, people find it easier to make fun of women. Relative to old men, jokes about the elderly are 3 times as likely to be negative about old women on screen. On top of this, in a 63-year span, the Oscar for Best Actress is only awarded to women over the age of 39 17 times. And honestly, 39 isn't even old. One of the most common stereotypes for older women is the wicked witch trope. Older women are depicted as bitter, ugly, and wicked, and are often the villains of Disney movies and stories, like these women from Snow White and Hansel and Gretel. Another negative stereotype of women in movies is the character that just can't let go of her youth and beauty. For another Disney villain example, we have the mother from Tangled, who obsessively steals the youth of others to maintain her image. A Hollywood film example would be Sunset Boulevard, where Norma Desmond, a washed-up actress, can't let go of her looks and career and makes a fool of herself for the media. Although they aren't always as obvious, men do not escape these gendered stereotypes either, especially when it comes to aging in cinema. From erectile dysfunction jokes to being called a grumpy old man, these stereotypes also need to be addressed. The first stereotype is that the old man has to be a wise old sage. As we've discussed in class, this stereotype is complicated, because while being treated with the respect of a wise old man is complimentary, it may set unrealistic expectations of older people in the wisdom department. On this slide we see the classic wise old sages, Dumbledore from Harry Potter, Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, and Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars. Recently, there has been a trend in movies that glorifies the old men misbehaving trope, such as Bad Grandpa and Dirty Grandpa. While these stories depict lively men breaking boundaries and living their best lives, they're often flat characters and come out as one-dimensional. Plus, in the movie Bad Grandpa, they didn't even cast a real older adult, they just age-faced a young actor. Next, we have the tried-and-true archetype of the dirty old man. As you may guess, these portrayals are harmful because it plants the idea that an older man can't be sexual because it is gross or it's creepy, when it really is quite natural. It's also used for comedic effect, which is harmful because it shows that an older person's sexuality is funny rather than realistic. Another common happening in movies is that the old person dies. This person is often the same wise old sage that helps the main character out in the beginning. See these examples here with Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars. While we should discuss death and be aware of it, it's kind of frustrating to see a character die simply because they are old or because they have to move the story along. Oftentimes, producers forgo casting older adults altogether and spend time and money aging younger actors with makeup, which is inherently ageist. Production companies are under the assumption that maybe an older person would forget their lines or that they wouldn't be a very good actor simply because of their age. Let's take a look at these examples. In the case of The Graduate, the women who played Elaine and her mother, Mrs. Robinson, were the same age at the time of the production. In The Godfather, Marlon Brando played Don Corleone, who is 10 to 20 years older than he was in real life. But I have to say there are some pretty darn good films about older adults, such as Alexander Payne's Nebraska. This story explores the relationship between a father and a son in a loving and insightful manner. Next up is Our Souls at Night, starring Jane Fonda and Robert Redford. This movie is significant because it truthfully depicts an intimate relationships between two older adults and the problems that surround it, such as judgment from their neighbors, friends, and children. Finally, we have the television show Grace and Frankie, which is groundbreaking as well because it depicts issues concerning gay older adults, aging as a woman, and identity in late life after divorce. Both of these main characters are dynamic, funny, and realistic to an extent. So, how do we as regular people fix this issue when we're outside of the film industry? One way is to be mindful of what you consume and support filmmakers and actors who create realistic stories of aging. Another way to support this cause is to call things like you see it. If you watch a movie and it perpetuates ageist stereotypes, leave a review calling them out, or compose a tweet and post it to Twitter. In the end, it's important to remember that it's okay to enjoy movies that aren't perfect when it comes to the portrayal of aging. Just be mindful of what you're consuming and take things for what they are, usually not realistic.